with the White House. The committee has still not received the intercepts or other information that the chairman was referring to, and therefore it is really impossible for us to evaluate any of the merits of what the chairman has said. But I can say this. The chairman will need to decide whether he is the chairman of an independent investigation into conduct which includes allegations of potential coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians, or he is going to act as a surrogate of the White House because he cannot do both. And unfortunately, I think the actions of today throw great doubt into the ability of both the chairman and the committee to conduct the investigation the way it ought to be conducted. I have expressed these grave concerns with the chairman. I only learned about this the way that all of you did when the chairman briefed the press in advance of briefing his own committee members. And that is a deep, deep problem. I think it does underscore the importance of establishing an independent commission, a body that is fully independent of any political considerations, including those that may emanate from the White House. That would certainly give me a lot of confidence that in addition to whatever work our committee does and the Intelligence Committee does, that there is a truly independent body that is looking into the grave issues that have been raised. Second, with respect to the intercepts themselves that the chairman referenced, those have not been provided to the committee for our evaluation. But on the basis of what the chairman has said and on the basis of my conversation with the chairman, I can say this. There is still no evidence that the president was wiretapped by his predecessor. President Trump's claims that he was remain as baseless today as they were yesterday. And they were the day before when the directors of the FBI and NSA testified that they were made without any basis in fact. If the incident today is an indication that after making the baseless claim, the president then aggravated the damage by implicating the British in a potential plot to have the British surveil him on behalf of President Obama, and now is attempting to interfere in the congressional investigation, again with the effort of trying to provide some substance to a claim without substance, then the damage, the wrecking ball of this allegation has just claimed another victim, that being our own committee. What I understand from the chairman is that he has reviewed intercepts of foreign intelligence. And what I understand from the chairman is there's no indication that that surveillance was anything but lawful. And what people need to understand about foreign intelligence gathering and incidental collection is if we are listening to two foreign spies, for example, talking to each other on foreign soil, or two representatives of a foreign government, and they mention a U.S. person, that is incidental collection. It doesn't necessarily mean there is a call from a foreign party to a U.S. person. Even the mention of a U.S. person is incidental collection, and that name would be masked. If there is a call with a U.S. person or U.S. person identities are involved at all, those names are masked. But there are proper procedures for unmasking a name. When it is necessary for the intelligence agencies to understand the significance of the intercept, and they cannot do that when the names are masked, you can properly unmask the name. The chairman has provided no evidence that any names that were unmasked improperly. And of course, without the ability for the committee to look at the intercepts, we're not in a position to evaluate whether the procedures were followed or were not followed. Moreover, as I understand from my conversation with the chairman, most of the names in the intercepts were in fact masked. And the chairman's concern was that he could still figure out the identities of some of the parties even though the names were masked. Well, that doesn't mean that the masking was improper. And so, again, it's impossible to evaluate whether there's any there in terms of these intercepts without the committee being able to look at them. And thus far, the chair has not provided this evidence to the committee. So this is deeply troubling along many levels. But among the most significant levels is it really impedes our ability to do this investigation the way we should. I've been part of investigations that were conducted properly when the House Intelligence Committee investigated Benghazi, and I've been part of investigations that were not, such as the Benghazi Select Committee. It was my hope that our investigation could be conducted properly. It's still my hope that this investigation should be conducted properly, but unfortunately the actions of the chair throw that very much in doubt, and I'd be happy to respond.
He said, and also he further said he hopes this isn't part of a broader campaign by the White House to deflect from the Comey testimony. So he also seemed to be hinting, at least, that maybe this came from the White House or somebody or someone in the administration as part of doing that. He basically said that Nunes is working for them, and I don't see how they work together. And what he was also saying is, this isn't our job. Our job is oversight. Our job is not to alert anybody whose name may be picked up in any kind of investigation. And by the way, he also gave it to Devin Nunes when he said, these names were not unmasked, as Devin Nunes had said. He said that the chairman said to him they were masked, but he kind of knew who they were by reading further into the document.
So Devin Nunes unmasked them, perhaps.
That's right. And then I think we have to ask these other questions, and you're better to answer this than I am, Phil, which is, what else isn't being investigated? Is this part of routine surveillance that is perhaps taking place in New York at Trump Tower or whatever? Or is there something else that we just don't know about?
I'm going to have Phil Mudd walk us through this whole issue of foreign intercepts, incidental collection in just a moment.
Right.
But this is a very big deal coming at such a sensitive moment, just, 2.5 weeks after the president tweeted against the former president, making those unsubstantiated allegations against President Obama.
Well, basically, Adam Schiff, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, just told the American people, you can't trust what's coming out of this committee on this hugely important investigation. That's basically what he just said. They're not going to be able to hold an actual, independent, real, thorough investigation. So now, if you're an American at home watching all of this information, watching Jim Comey testify on Monday, and you're wondering what's going on, you are now being told by the number 2 on the committee here, don't trust this committee. So now I guess people are going to have to either look to the Senate Intel Committee. Maybe there will be a head of steam, but I don't see this call for an independent commission is going to be very difficult, I think, for Republicans in Congress to move on. And what we saw earlier in Devin Nunes was somebody trying to provide cover to Donald Trump, give him some political cover for what he's been out there saying and talking when he said more evidence on this stuff would come out.
He seemed to be making the case for the White House rather
You're talking about Devin Nunes.
Devin Nunes, rather than serving as the chairman of an impartial committee. You have to ask the question, why did he go to the West Wing before he called Adam Schiff, his Democratic counterpart? Why did he do that? His answer, Jake Tapper had a great interview with him, and I asked those questions, and he said, well, this concerned me enough to notify the president. So what he has succeeded in doing is raising more questions than he has answered.
Well, Phil, you've worked at the CIA, the FBI. You've dealt with foreign intelligence collection. You've dealt with incidental collection. Yes. Walk us, the allegations from Devin Nunes as the chairman were very specific, and we heard the rebuttal from the ranking Democrat.
That's right. This is not an intelligence story. I'll step through. It's a political story.
Yep.
It's 5:22 in the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. We haven't talked about Russia for one moment. This is a shell game. Let me step you through the intel, because it's not that interesting. You're collecting against Wolf Blitzer, an ambassador. Wolf Blitzer is a foreign ambassador. An American calls him. That's incidental collection. It's a significant call because we now know the FBI has an investigation based on concerns that the Russians interfered with elections. So if Wolf is the Russian ambassador, I'm curious that Gloria is calling him. Her name to the investigators is going to be unmasked. That's common procedure within. I need to know who's talking to the ambassador. It's Gloria. It's not just whether she passed money to you or you passed money to her. I want to know if you're going to dinner. I want to know the nature of the social relationship. At that point, the investigators are going to say there's a certain small number of people in the U.S. government, at the FBI, the CIA, elsewhere, Department of Justice investigators, who need to understand this. Meanwhile, there's a court that has to approve that collection to ensure that it's legal. This is not complicated. It's common. I personally have spoken to political officials who have appeared in this coverage. You know what they say? They don't say, I'm concerned that I was picked up. They say, that's interesting. This foreign official reporting back to his home country is saying something that's fundamentally different than what I said in that meeting. Fascinating.
So it could just be gossip,
yes.
right? It could
yes.
just be gossip that was picked up. But, you know, you have to ask the question of whether Nunes was trying in a way to prove the president's point, which, of course, he doesn't prove, when he said Barack Obama was wiretapping him in Trump Tower. This does not prove the point, but you have to ask the question about whether the administration believes that this gives the president some cover, which, of course, they would think it would.
Well, it doesn't prove the point. It muddies the water,
muddies
though.
the water,
and that's why the
exactly.
president says he feels somewhat vindicated by this, which, of course, he's not vindicated at all in what Devin Nunes said. But the other thing I just want to say that Phil is talking about, because you went right to Russia, but Chairman Nunes said this had nothing to do with Russia.
And he also said the foreign intelligence collection was legal, meaning it was done through a search warrant, a FISA warrant, and all of that. David Axelrod is with us. It certainly looks at this point, David, and you tell me if it could be fixed, this entire House Intelligence Committee investigation beginning this past Monday with that extraordinary testimony from the FBI director, the National Security Agency director. It looks like the whole thing has now been compromised.
Well, there's no question. Look, this is a mind-boggling development for the chairman of this committee to ankle on down to the White House before he even informs the members of the committee on the matters in which he's briefing the president is just unfathomable. And you have to wonder what kind of pressure Devin Nunes was under from the White House and other sources because of the fact that he had been proceeding on a bipartisan basis. He had stepped forward with Adam Schiff to say nothing we've seen supports the president's allegations, and now all of a sudden he takes a sharp turn. And in his interview with Jake, he at one point said, well, this seems to lend some credence to what the president was saying. Not really. Not at all. And yet now he seems to be playing not the role of a partial committee chairman trying to get to the facts, but the role of a political apparatchik trying to help the White House out of a jam. I think it's a big, big problem. And one question I have, Wolf, is when and if we ever find out how this information came to him. Remember, the president said the other day, I think there are going to be some interesting things that are going to surface in the next few days. How did this information get to the chairman and not to the other members of the committee?
A statement just released, by the way, David, from the Democratic National Committee. Let me read to you. The former Trump transition member, Devin Nunes, blew what little credibility he had left with this pathetic charade. This isn't an investigation. It's a protection racket for Donald Trump and his fragile ego. All Nunes has achieved is to prove that we need a real independent investigation and to raise serious questions about why the Trump team was in communication with foreign individuals under FISA warrant. It's time for an independent 9/11-style commission and a special prosecutor. Now, that formal statement, it makes the point that Nunes is not an impartial investigator or an intelligence expert. He's a former Trump transition member. That's how they call him. Those are serious charges.
Yeah, those are serious charges, and he's brought that on himself through his behavior just in the last day. Until now, I don't think people would have accused him of conducting himself in a way that brought suspicion on himself. Look, Congress is a political body, so let's be honest about that. Adam Schiff supported Hillary Clinton. He wasn't necessarily on her transition team, but he supported Hillary Clinton. That's not the issue. The issue is here and now, how are they conducting themselves? Are they following standard procedure? Are they consulting each other? Are they going where the facts lead them? Or are they behaving in a fundamentally political way? And in going down to the White House instead of going to his committee, the chairman behaved in a fundamentally political way.
You know, Phil Mudd, a lot of people are going to conclude if it was in fact the Russian intention to cause some disruption here in the United States, we sure saw that today.
They sure did, but let's step back. If you're looking at this from a Russian angle or from an American angle, I think they may have a covert action here that over-succeeded. If you wanted Donald Trump in Moscow, your hope was presumably in places like Syria or Iran or Crimea, eastern Ukraine. Your hope might have been he can do more for us than Hillary Clinton. What is his latitude to go to the Congress now and say, I want to be easier with the Russians on sanctions? I think this might be historic in terms of, as a former CIA officer, a covert action that over-succeeded. The Russians might be saying, we got to step back for a moment because this might blow up in our faces.
You know, here's the question. If this collection was completely lawful, and if it was court-ordered, and if it was done in the right way, which Nunes seems to be saying—
Nunes says it was lawful.
Totally lawful. Then why is he running to the White House?